I bet you didn't know that tens of thousands of soldiers in World War II suffered, and many died, not from bullets, but from the cold itself. Cold has never needed permission to kill. Long before a trigger is pulled or an order is given, cold works quietly, draining strength, slowing judgment, and turning small mistakes into fatal ones. During World War II, entire offensives stalled, not because of enemy fire, but because winter arrived faster than preparation. On the Eastern Front, in the Ardennes and across frozen airfields, soldiers learned a hard truth. The cold didn't care who was winning. It only cared who stayed warm and who didn't. What most people don't realize is that survival in those conditions didn't come down to massive coats or heavy blankets. One of the most effective pieces of cold weather gear was almost invisible. A thin jacket liner, often overlooked, often underestimated, quietly kept thousands of soldiers functional when everything else failed. This wasn't comfort gear, it was survival engineering. And what makes it important today is that the same principles still outperform much of what passes for modern cold weather clothing. If you value real survival knowledge rooted in history, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who appreciates practical wisdom, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Survival Logic. Now let's get straight into why this forgotten liner mattered so much, and, well, why it still does. Winter as a weapon. World War II proved that cold could disable armies without firing a shot. Weapons froze, fuel thickened, boots became rigid blocks of ice, and exhausted men burned calories faster than supply lines could replace them. Frostbite wasn't just common, it was expected. The problem wasn't that soldiers lacked clothing. The problem was that much of what they wore worked against them once moisture entered the equation. Sweat was unavoidable. Marching, digging, hauling gear, and fighting generated heat. Traditional wool layers absorbed that moisture, held it close, and then froze. Once wet, insulation stopped insulating. Soldiers became colder the harder they worked. The jacket liner solved this problem by breaking the cycle entirely. The liner's effectiveness came from structure, not bulk. Instead of relying on thick fabric, it used multiple thin layers stitched into stable channels. These channels trapped still air, which is honestly the real insulator here, while preventing the insulation from clumping or collapsing with movement. Moisture was pushed outward instead of being held against the skin. This, in turn, created a stable microclimate around the body. Heat stayed close. Sweat escaped before freezing. The liner didn't make soldiers hot, it made them dry. You know, that distinction mattered more than anything else in extreme cold. Dry skin with trapped air stays warm far longer than soaked fabric piled inches thick. Modern outdoor gear often claims innovation, but honestly, the underlying physics haven't changed. Dry air insulates, wet fabric steals heat. The liner simply respected that truth. The jacket liner wasn't originally meant for infantry. It was developed for air crews, flying in unpressurized aircraft at high altitude, where temperatures dropped brutally fast, and, well, mobility mattered. Pilots needed insulation that didn't restrict movement or interfere with controls. Heavy coats were dangerous in cockpits, you know. The liner delivered warmth without stiffness. Ground troops noticed, of course. Whether issued officially, traded between units, or scavenged out of necessity, liners spread fast. Soldiers discovered they could move, fight and sleep more effectively with less weight. In places like Bastogne and the Eastern Front, that efficiency meant, well, fewer injuries and better endurance. What made the liner successful wasn't new technology. It was, in fact, ancient knowledge. Cold weather cultures long understood that insulation depended on trapped air. Animal hides, grasses, feathers and layered fibres were all used to create air pockets rather than thickness. The World War II liner, you know, followed the same logic with industrial precision. Thin layers, locked in place, stayed effective even when, well, abused. Structure replaced bulk. Stability replaced weight. And that principle, honestly, applies everywhere cold exists. Recreating this liner now is really straightforward and accessible. A tightly woven cotton shell works well because it blocks wind without trapping moisture. Inside, layered batting, quilt remnants, or natural fibres create insulation. Stitching matters more than material. Long channels prevent shifting and preserve air pockets during movement. The liner doesn't need to be tight. It needs to sit close enough to retain heat without compressing insulation. Worn under a wind-resistant outer layer, it dramatically increases warmth without adding bulk. The result is less fatigue, fewer layers, and better temperature control. Cold drains energy relentlessly. Shivering burns calories. Frozen layers restrict movement. Heavy clothing exhausts the wearer. The liner reduced all of that. By maintaining warmth efficiently, it allowed soldiers to conserve strength for work, movement and survival. That same advantage applies today. Whether you're camping, hunting, living off-grid, or preparing for cold emergencies, conserving energy is survival. A simple liner can turn marginal gear into reliable protection and prevent cold from becoming the deciding factor. The jacket liner endures because it's honest. No electronics, no coatings that fail, no dependence on fragile systems. It works because it follows the rules of heat and moisture without fighting them. Anyone can make one. Anyone can use one. And once you understand why it works, you'll start questioning a lot of modern cold weather gear. This is the kind of history that belongs in use, not in museums. If you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe to Survival Logic, share this video with someone who respects practical history, and leave a comment to keep this knowledge alive. Cold doesn't care how modern your gear looks, it only respects what works. Stay updated for more videos every week.